You're listening to Night Dreams Radio with Gary Anderson.
Well, hi, everyone. I hope everybody had a great day. This is Gary, and you're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Hey, tonight we got a special guest, a hip-hop artist. I'm going to let him tell you all about himself to you guys tonight, but we're going to talk about UFOs, aliens, being abducted, and a lot more. Hey, get a cup of coffee, get a nice sofa or a chair, sit back, and let's get going. And, let's see, are you there? Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Oh, we got you there.
Awesome.
Okay, well, why don't you tell everybody what you do professionally and what got you into the paranormal?
Definitely. I'm a hip-hop artist. I do esoteric and spiritual hip-hop. Also have a podcast. Go by the name of TruthSeekah. And been doing this for a couple of years now. Been on a spiritual journey the majority of my life. And I cover esoteric, UFOs, aliens, these type of philosophies that are in ancient texts and having my own experiences as well. And I take all of these experiences and put them in my music. So do hip-hop music that's infused with these different stories of experiences that I've had dealing with angelic beings, ETs, aliens, shadow beings, all of these things that kind of go bump in the night, and have kind of made my own lane with the music. And awesome enough, people resonate with it. So it's kind of a growing genre that I've kind of created myself, and there's some other artists I'm affiliated with as well. So got started in this stuff by simply having my own encounters, even as a kid, but waking up in the middle of the night and seeing shadow figures in my room or on top of me in the middle of the night, having a sleep paralysis and things like that. So having all these crazy encounters as a kid, I just began to kind of get over infatuated with the occult, with the paranormal, and led me to music and research and things like that in those areas, and essentially led me to where I am today, studying under a lot of different religious groups and sects, many different realms of Christianity, different sects of witchcraft, Satanism, Wicca, different things like that, just trying it all out and seeing who had the truth and seeing what actually had power and where the energy was. And so all of that to be said, to kind of make a long story short, has brought me to where I am now, and doing this esoteric spiritual hip-hop.
Uh-huh. Wow. How old were you when you had your first experience?
The first experience I can remember, I was probably 4 years old, was waking up in my room one night and feeling the presence of these, what it seemed to be two huge shadow beings pinning me down to the bed, one on each shoulder. And I don't know if I couldn't speak. I knew I was too afraid to speak, to even cough. And, had this experience when I was a child. So as I grew up on into my teenage years and stuff, I would ask people about it. I would try to look up stuff with books and see scary movies that had similar, things in them. And like, man, I would see stuff in movies and say, man, I've seen something similar to that, So part of me always knew that was real.
Yeah, that's a scary thing. When I was probably maybe 8 years old, I lived in Seattle, but my grandmother and a lot of our relatives were in Oakland, California. And I spent the summer, one summer when I was 8 years old in Oakland with my uncle and then with my grandmother. And my grandmother lived in a real old apartment complex. It goes back probably around 1880s, 1890s. I mean, it was really old. And one night I was in bed there by myself and, in this strange room. And all of a sudden I saw a shadow come out of a closet. And I remember going under the covers and hiding. It was so scary. And then I talked to my grandmother, Sally, the next morning. And I said, hey, I saw a ghost out of the closet. And she said, well, the place was haunted and that she saw them too. And it was kind of interesting because it was like a dark shadow just came right out of the closet and kind of slid along the wall. And there was no lights outside around there, so it couldn't have been any reflections.
Yeah, I would ask my cousins and friends like that, and a lot of people had, never had anything like that happen. But then you would ask certain relatives, and they would say, "Oh yeah, that's what they call, witches, and that, they're sent to, protect you and things like that." I was like, man, why? I was scared to death. You wake up in the middle of the night and something's pinning you to the bed, and so different people had different experiences with them. I remember even before it was big. Now, if you research this phenomena, you understand that there's someone called the man in the trench coat or whatever, the man with the black hat.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing. But I remember my cousin telling me whenever we was younger that he seen that shadow figure standing in the hallway, the man with a trench coat and a black hat. And then you find out that that's actually a thing that people encounter. There's tons of people who have experienced something like that. So I've done so much studying, so much research, and the weird thing about it is I can't actually tell you what it was. I mean, I can give you an opinion if it was a demon or a disembodied spirit or something like that. I honestly don't know. I do know that those people who have had these type of encounters at a young age seem to be marked to have some type of spiritual significance on the earth, whether they're called to study out the occult or the esoteric or spirituality. But many people, and probably rightfully so, if you have this encounter, this impression at a young age, it would kind of set you apart anyway. But most people, it's almost like they were marked for something, or maybe something on the demonic realm that knew that they were actually going to do a lot of good on the earth, of trying to scare them and make them afraid even at an early age.
Yeah, I've had people say, "Oh no, they were angels." I don't know. I don't know if they are demon or they are angels. I just know that what I saw, it did not, threaten me, if anything. But I mean, when you're a young kid at that age, just like you were, and all of a sudden you see something like that, I mean, nobody pinned me down like what happened to you. But I mean, to see something come out of the closet and just kind of slide around the wall and stop, and then go back into the closet was enough that it's burned into my brain. And, I mean, it was scary.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who talk about that stuff. And there's even another one where they call the old hag syndrome is what they call.
Uh-huh.
And they say they're being pinned to the bed, and you wake up and there's an old witch screaming in your face when you wake up, and it's pinning you to the bed. I haven't had that happened, but I had something similar. There's this weird in-between realm that I've experienced, and I remember going to this place as a kid of being really sick with the flu, of being really sick and just bedridden with the flu, and your mind takes you to these weird places. And I've been to some place very similar where I had entities or something screaming or standing next to you, and it's really weird because I remember it when I was a kid. And then every time I would get the flu or have a really high temperature, I would go to that same place that's only familiar to me when I was a kid, being really sick, and seeing that the old hag or this person, they can't make out exactly what's going on. It's kind of slippery, and when you're dealing with those realms, it's not just night and day. It's not just black and white. There's a lot of gray area there to try to understand what is going on. And so I think that there's a lot of people who are into the paranormal research and the occult type movements with just spirituality, and not even being used for anything negative, but people know that something's going on. And I think we all have a piece of the puzzle. We take our pieces that we've experienced and we've encountered, and we bring it to the table, and just look at the evidence for what it is, that something's going on. We might not be able to write a book and sell it and kind of base a doctrine off of what's happening, but something is going on.
Yeah, and and this has been going back for years and years, long before the internet. So, nowadays somebody can put up a story on the internet and 30 seconds later somebody's reading about it. But you go back to 1800s and 1700s. I mean, people then were talking about shadows and things like what we're talking about right now, and all over the world. So it has to be something that I feel is actually happening. I've had people say, no, it's just a figment of somebody's imagination or a dream. Maybe for some people they do have dreams that way, but I do think there's a certain percentage of people out there that have experienced that.
Yeah, I'm really big into the scriptures, and I come from a Christian background. So just studying the Bible and understanding, some of the obscure verses that angels and what we, would call aliens or light beings and things like this, and Nephilim, and even studying the realms of the demonic, as it's mentioned in the scriptures. There's a place in the book of Job where Job talks about this very thing. He talks about waking up in the middle of the night and seeing this figure essentially in the hallway hovering, and it's just like smoke, this mist or this fog. And I've had other experiences where they would seem just like this, and he talks about fear coming upon him and all of the hair on his body standing on end, and it talks about this entity or this spirit, whatever we want to call it, gives him a message, and they translate messages and vibrations and things with it. So I've had very similar experiences, and when you do read about it in ancient culture or in the Bible, for one, I think it's good for us to talk about this, that people can feel like they're not alone, that it's okay to be different. It's okay to be the only one who's interested in this stuff. I mean, if you haven't had any encounters, I mean, that's a good reason why you wouldn't be interested. But those who have, they want to get to the bottom of it. And a lot of times when we bring this type of stuff up at the churches or at the synagogues or mosques, they want to demonize everything and just say everything's demonic. And in this case, even in the scriptures where Job had this entity or spirit appear to him, this was probably just something neutral, something that brought a message or, just a vibration. Understanding in the Bible, the word angel simply means messengers. And when the angels, the spirits would come, they would bring messages for humanity, for a person, something that they were supposed to do in their lifetime, their calling, if you will. And so it's really refreshing to read the scriptures and read this stuff. But unless you have had these encounters, you can just easily read over these verses and they don't stand out at you. But if you've had these encounters, you'll know exactly what Job's talking about, waking up, seeing a shadow figure that's moving as a mist, and it doesn't have a form. It's just moving in the air, and it brings a message. And so very interesting stuff when we go back and read it in ancient culture and all of these things. If we want to talk about aliens or ghosts or demons, it's been throughout ancient civilization and cave paintings and ancient writings in the medieval times of UFOs. And that's the interesting thing, whenever the technology outdates, the people. So now if we see writings or pictures of a light in the sky, or it could be a satellite, it could be a jetliner, it could be advanced technology that we have. But for the people that were somewhat primitive, for them to be having these same encounters as well hundreds of years ago is when it brings something else to the table,
Well, it must go back to the Egyptians, and then before the Egyptians, I mean, even going back to the cavemen with the drawings on the walls and the caves, with drawing like spaceships and drawing men flying, like with a helmet on and weird stuff. I mean, things have happened and things are going to happen. And I guess if you have a negative mind, maybe even if it happened to you, you won't realize it. But if you keep a neutral mind, I mean, I've had things happen to me in my life I can't explain. I mentioned on my show here last week, I used to manage a business in Tacoma, and the building was built in the 1870s. And it originally had a hotel, and then the basement was a bar. And it was a bar from 1870s to, I guess, around 1830s when it closed. And then through the years, the building was revamped. Also, back in that time frame, the building was a hotel, and the upper floors were a brothel. And I managed that business, about 16 years, and I had a lot of employees during that time. And we carried our inventory in the basement. And I had my employees go down and naturally bring up inventory. And all these years, and it was a lot of different employees. They didn't know each other. I mean, one guy was a Navy SEAL that worked for me. I had a guy who was a ranger. I had a guy who served on submarines. People that are very reliable. And so many of them would come up to me and say, something is going on in the basement. And I go, like what? And they say, well, I saw a shadow, or they smelled lilac like I did, or strange things, would move in front of him. I kind of, at the start, when I first started managing the business, I started thinking, well, this guy is a crackpot. But then I heard it from another person. I heard it from another person for years. Never had that experience. And one day I went down the basement to get something, and I was walking down there, and, I had two occasions, but this one occasion I smelled lilac, and it got really cold. And I walked barefoot, and it went away. I backed up, I smelled lilac, and it got cold again, and I walked through it, and I go, wow, that's strange. If anything, I should have been smelling the sewer, because the basement actually went underneath the main road out there, because that's how old the building was. And I walked back the same area, and it wasn't, when I was done, it wasn't cold. I didn't smell anything. And then a while later, I went down there, weeks and weeks later, to get something. And then all of a sudden I was walking, and I felt like somebody took their fingers really hard and tapped my shoulders where it kind of hurt. And it really offended me. And I turned around because I hate to say it, I felt like I was going to swing at somebody. That's how bad it hurt. There was nobody there.
Wow.
Nobody. And it was no way, because I only had one employee working at that hour upstairs, and I was the only one down there. And I clearly could see in the basement, in the aisles, there was absolutely nobody there. So it's something that's when I started believing in the paranormal, that there's things out there that you can't explain.
It's interesting that you bring that to the table as far as, the whole smell of it. I've heard about people casting out demons out of people in different deliverance and exorcisms performed on people, and they will talk about smelling a really strong stench of garbage or vomit while like a demonic entity is leaving a person. So that's very interesting. You talk about the smell. I've even heard about people in churches and having this sweet aroma come through when they're in worship, and they're in a worship service singing praises to God, and a sweet smell of honey or honeysuckles or flowers would come through, and it's this very pleasant smell. So I've experienced the exorcisms where you smell the really strong stench when people are actually going through that. That's really interesting.
Oh, yeah. And one other thing, too, like I mentioned on the show the other night, too, I used to be down there sometimes late at night working on stuff. And from the main sales floor, because they removed several floors of the building back in the 60s because it was not safe. But there was still the stairs left from the hotel to go up, up to the offices, which would have been actually 2 rooms at one point. I was there late at night, and all of a sudden I heard a bunch of footsteps going up the stairs, and I heard muffled talking. And I figured, hey, gee, maybe the bosses came in or something, right? So, I ran out of my office real quick and ran up to the stairs. There was absolutely nobody there. I also went back to the back door, and it was still double locked, because I used to double lock it when I was there at night. Not a safe area. And to this day, I mean, when you hear footsteps going up a flight of stairs and you hear muffled talking, male and female, it's enough where I would absolutely, we closed at 6 o'clock at night. I tell you, I was right at that door at 6 o'clock ready to go home.
Yeah, I can imagine. And just to really, try to pinpoint what it is, I think a lot of people believe that, there's, maybe the people who lived before us have been through something traumatic, and it leaves an imprint that's just there almost on a loop of something that's traumatic that actually happened to someone. And there's a lot of cases where people have seen suicides, that are happening, or people jumping off of buildings and things like that. My wife went to New Orleans and went on a ghost tour, and seen something on a ghost tour in New Orleans, and she's seen somebody actually either falling off a building or jumping off or whatever. So it's almost like these loops that are created there with something of, the energy changes for something that's so dramatic, and somebody, maybe it creates a rip in this reality, and just like an impression there that's just plays over and over. There's, everybody has something different to say about the phenomena, but there's, like I said, there's something there, and just to pinpoint it and to be an expert, I can pretend to be, but I'm not. And I think a lot of people who are pretending to be aren't either. You know, they
Right.
just kind of play one on TV. Essentially, really, there's so many ghost shows and things out there now, and people are just kind of building up to the hype and those things, but they really don't give a lot of concrete evidence and things like that. It doesn't do it justice, you know.
Yeah, especially, you know, I pretty much, when I hear somebody talk about a story, I can pretty much tell when it's not real, or, you know, if it's real, just, you know, by their tone of the voice. I mean, in a case like in mine, real quickly, after I ran into that problem, I started researching in the Tacoma newspaper, going back, you know, to when that place was a speakeasy and, you know, and a bar and all that stuff. And you know, it was also right off where all the ships would come into Tacoma, Washington, right in the port. So a lot of sailors were there. It used it at one time. But then I started finding out there was a lot of people that died there. I mean, there was a couple major murders in the basement when it was a bar. A couple of women in the brothel got killed. So when I started, you know, reading that, and then, you know, it goes back to, if it was this me it happened to, then I would start saying, hey. But, I mean, there was a lot of employees through those 16 years that would come back and say that things were going on. So, I mean, and they never even, a lot of these employees didn't even know the former employees. So, I mean, it's just, it's just, you know, too much to be, you know, where it's false.
Yeah, and I think that the atmosphere has a lot to do with it too. The type of things that you're entertaining. Obviously, if it was a brothel, there's all types of energy and maybe deception and things like that, and regret and heartache and things like that going on as well. You know, when I try to look back at my childhood and see what targeted me or what could have been different to differentiate me from the kid next door, right? You know, one thing about it, my mom and dad had a lot of parties, and they would have a lot of random strangers over. And I remember having conversation with random strangers, you know, almost as a toddler, just a young kid, sitting at the table having a conversation with an old man, and who's drunk out of his mind, and we're talking about candy. I think we had some candy on the bar, and I remember this man just falling straight back off the table, passing out, and they had to carry him out by his arms and legs, and all these different people who carried these different energies around in there. Whenever you're overly intoxicated like that, you become susceptible to spiritual influence as well. So all of these people being around, and then I'm from New Orleans, so, you know, it was kind of passed down in the family that they would burn candles, essentially doing candle magic, to put hexes on people or to get good luck, or if they had a job interview or something like that. So all of that stuff was practiced in my family as well. So you got to look at it, maybe after a party, everybody goes to bed. You know, there could be these type of energies and spirits still lurking around in the house from these people. And, you know, it's very, you know, it makes you bring everything into perspective, especially if you have a kid, you know.
Right.
I have a daughter, so, you know, I try to look at the things I do. You know, I go to bed, and things that I let into my home, and I'm the priest of my home, you know, and we have to be protective over that stuff. And who's to say that something didn't linger off of somebody else who came into the house, and the parents are in the bed, and then here's a spirit off messing with the children in the middle of the night.
Well, the area you're from, wasn't there voodoo and all that? Yeah, that stuff. Have you ever ran across any of that type of stuff?
Some. I mean, we used to go to, because I was into like Satanism for a while, and got into Wicca and witchcraft, and so we would go to Bourbon Street, and there was some shrines and stuff down there. There's some witchcraft shops and stuff that they would set up, and we'd go down there and get books and things. And so we were into it a little bit. I wasn't, you know, much into voodoo, but was more into the you know what I'm saying, the side of Satanism and witchcraft, which you know, that, I guess that even by, you know, nature of trying to get into something like that. I mean, if you're coming into Satanism and not knowing much about it, only thing you know, it's the opposite of Christ.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of why it was assembled, to be a mockery of the church. And, you know, not that they acknowledge the church or give any validity, but they're creating something that's the polar opposite to what's already there with that, you know, with that hierarchy. And so, I mean, that's out of the, the mouth of Anton LaVey. So I was into that and into, a lot of negative things. And so when I got into witchcraft and I got into that stuff, I started having a lot of encounters as well. I ended up opening up some doors in the spirit realm that I couldn't close, and ended up getting in over my head, and ended up getting really sick. I ended up being visited by some elemental spirits, and so very similar to those shadow beings that I seen when I was a kid. I ended up, we had somebody who was a warlock who was our teacher, and we would go and have parties at his house on like a Friday, Saturday night, and it'd just be all the teenagers in the neighborhood would be over there and drinking and partying and stuff. But he was really big into the occult, and I would go over there. I would want him to teach me stuff. And so I'd stay up all night picking his brain about his experiences and his encounters, wanting to know that stuff was real. And I had somebody there to teach me. I ended up stealing something from the gentleman. After a couple of years, I stole some video games from him, and we was at a party at his house one night, and all of my stuff I stole from him was across the street, and it was in a duffel bag. And I stole some video games, and I had some other stuff that I stole from some friends. Because at this particular time, I was living in another state, and I was only in town for the weekend, so I ended up stealing from a bunch of friends. And while I was staying with the warlock, I stole a video game.
Uh-huh.
One of the friends went and found my bag in the closet and brought it over and had the video game that I stole from the warlock. So this guy walks in, and I see him holding the video game, and he shows it to the warlock. And they look at each other, all these people sitting in the living room, and there was just people everywhere. And there was a bunch of guys there who they were wearing all black, and I'd never met these guys before. They were some older gentlemen. They look at each other. I thought we were about to get jumped for stealing for them because they were into gang involvement as well.
Uh-huh.
They all stand up one at a time, and they walk to the back of the house. I didn't know if they were going to get a shotgun or baseball bats or what. So I looked at my cousin who was there with me at the time and I said, "Look, we got to go. We got to go right now." He said, "What? There's a bunch of, ladies here, and they're about to be drinking and stuff all night. And, you know what I'm saying? The night is young. I think it was still early, like 6 o'clock. And so I was like, "No, we got to go now." So we go outside. I told him what happened. Some random guy out there was talking to some girls at his vehicle. I asked him if he can give us a ride down the road. He said, "Yeah." So he brought me down the street, and I was going to stay in my girlfriend's treehouse because I was staying out of town with really nowhere to stay but with friends, and I had already ripped all my friends off.
And how old were you? How old were you at that point?
I was 13.
Okay.
13. Mm-hmm. And so I was waiting for my mom to come back to pick me up from out of state. So we had just a couple more days we needed to kill. So he lets us out down the street, and we're trying to make a run for my girlfriend's treehouse because we were going to spend the night in there. We had already slept in there one night. So we're at the tree line, and we're looking at the treehouse, and we're going to run across the field, but we didn't want her mom and dad to see us. So we're waiting for the sun to go down, and I see this light in the yard, and it's just hovering back and forth for about 45 minutes. At first, I thought it was her dad's flashlight. I thought he was in the yard with the flashlight. But this light just kind of began to go back and forth and almost hypnotize us. We were just sitting there waiting for the light to go out, and it never stopped. So the sun was starting to go down, so we go around the side of the bushes getting ready to run to the treehouse. And when we did, we come up on this open field, and this entity appeared. It looked like, the best way I can describe it, it looked like a camel. It was about 8 foot tall, and it was made out of the blackest of night. It ran past me and my cousin, screamed, and knocked us both down and disappeared right when it passed us. So we got up, freaked out. We ran as fast as we could to the treehouse. And after that time, a bunch of bad stuff started to happen. We'll come to find out. I mean, just putting two and two together, the warlock, he had a protection spell on his belongings, and he summoned an elemental spirit to come and get his belongings back. And you would think that was like a warning to stay away, but that just kind of sent me down even deeper within it because I said, "Look, this is real. Like, now I know it's real. Like, you can actually, if you get good enough, you can make contact with other entities and summon them to do your bidding. Like, it really can happen. It's not in the movies. It's not a theory. This is real." I could see if it was just me who experienced it and I was by myself, but when it's two or more there, and two people had the same encounter, that's when you got to look at what's going on? If something's there. And that kind of led me down a really dark road because I started trying to make pacts with demons and summon them and things like that. And I opened up my mind to some realms that I opened up doors that I couldn't shut.
Okay.
I tried to reach out into the other realms and something reached back, that I made contact, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all.
Did they try to hurt you?
Yeah, I ended up going insane. I was at a place where I would just do these seances and rituals, and I would try to open my mind to any spirit that was available that wanted to show itself to me and come through. And I had all these books, and I would do rituals out of all the books, just wanting, because I knew it was real. I'm like wanting to kind of bypass all the spiritual work that you do. Mind you, I was a misguided teen. I stole from people. I robbed people. Beat people up, lied, cheated, and steal, and then I'm dealing with devils. I'm trying to deal with demons on top of that. So that I was a target.
Uh-huh.
And you kind of attract the entities with what energy you're putting out. If you're a negative person, if you're doing those type of things, and you're going to attract lower level entities around you. And I'm opening up my mind to this stuff. And I got to a place where I would see them in my house at night. I would be watching television, and they would run past the TV. It got to a point where some crazy things started to happen, and it's very much reminiscent of this movie with Kevin Bacon called Stir of Echoes.
Oh, wow.
I'd be sitting on the couch watching television, and my body would go numb. I would turn pale and get really cold, and I would be sucked into another realm. And in this realm, I just seen shapes and colors and spirits and stuff moving around, and they were talking, but I couldn't understand them. It was like in an ancient language. And then I would come back to my body, gasping for breath, and I'd be crying. It was so scary. I felt like I was dying. I felt like something was taking my mind from me. People say, I'm losing my mind. You're going to make me lose my mind. I literally felt like I was losing my mind, like I was going insane. And it would just happen sporadically. I'd be in mid-conversation with my girlfriend, sitting on the couch, and I'd be sucked into those realms. And I got what I was looking for. I made contact, but it wasn't like I thought. I couldn't control it. I didn't know what they were or anything. And started to go schizophrenic. I'd try to go out in public to go shopping with my girlfriend and my grandmother, and I couldn't even look people in the face. I thought everybody was looking at me. We would go to like McDonald's to order food, and I couldn't look the person in the eye to tell them the meal that I wanted. I had to whisper to my girlfriend and things, and I got into a really bad spot. I thought I became a hypochondriac. Like every time I heard a sickness or a disease, I thought I had it. We'd be watching television, and you would hear a disease, and I knew in my mind that I had it. Cancer and brain tumors. It was demonic. It was really demonic. And I was a teenager. I was 13 when this stuff was happening. 13, 14 years old. And so I got into this really crazy place, man. And I had been a Christian a few years before that. I had the Christian experience. I went to church. And I went to a prayer meeting, actually, and, gave my life to Jesus. And when I did that, I had this encounter with God. This was some years before, where I felt like the Holy Spirit come upon me and burnt out all the wrong that I had ever done.
Uh-huh.
And so this was in 1998. So I did the Christian experience thing for maybe 8 months or so, and then I fell off and got into the deep witchcraft. So when I was at my lowest, I knew that there was like a peace out there. I knew there was a peace that I experienced reading the scriptures and going to church and things like that. And so I knew that was like the only hope. Like I had to give my life back to God for any of this stuff to stop. And or if not, I was going to have to go to a mental institution or something, right? I don't know how I could go to a doctor and tell them about these demons and these spirits and things that were tormenting me, So I knew that they would put me on medication and stuff like that. So I ended up repenting of my sins and confessing that stuff. I got into a phone book and called all the churches in the area, leaving messages asking, telling pastors on their voicemails that I felt like I had demons in me and I need somebody to pray with me. I called about 15 churches, and one church called me back. And the pastor called me back and ended up coming up to the house to pray with us and picking us up and bringing us back to church and things like that. So that was in September of 2000. And so at that point is where everything kind of shifted, and did the Christian experience again. and just over the years, my studying just began to get a little bit deeper, and God kind of called me back to those things, into those realms of people who are still in the occult, people who are still in witchcraft and esoteric mysticism and things, that I can go back to those realms and function, because all of it's not demonic, right? There's obviously ways to study what's going on and what people are into, and so essentially that's where I'm at now. I try to start talking about a lot of this stuff in churches, because there would be concepts that would come up that weren't in the Bible, or they weren't. They were in the Bible, but people don't discuss them with biblical terms. We're talking about aliens or things like that. So I ended up kind of getting shunned by the church eventually, because I just felt drawn to these subjects again, and ended up doing what I'm doing now, doing this type of hip-hop music and talking about these experiences in my music. And I've had a lot more encounters since then, but they've all been beautiful. I've had the angelic encounters. I've seen the UFOs, but they've all been something of love and of light, and it's been awesome. So that's essentially, and to make a long story longer, that's essentially the story of where I came from and where I'm at now.
Oh, wow. I've talked to people in the past that, said that I used to know a person who was into witchcraft, and she had a bad habit. If she didn't like you, she would cast spells on you. And, and I seen some of the spell. This is back when I was my probably 18, 19-year-old range. And I don't know if it was psychological with the person, because she would tell him, I put a spell on you and something bad's going to happen to you. And then the next week, the guy's in a bad car accident, or another one, falls and he breaks a leg and things like that. And I mean, I do believe there is. But the thing is, I don't know. I don't know much about witchcraft, to be honest with you, but I know that if you give yourself, I guess there's two types of witchcraft too. I guess that's two types. And I'm just wondering, do you like to be a Wiccan or a witch? Are you totally giving your soul to the devil and for going Jesus and God?
Well, I think definitely if you're into Satanism, you want to denounce, anything that has to do with God or with Jesus. So you definitely want to do that if you're in Satanism. Witchcraft is more of the god and goddesses. You believe that there's just a masculine and feminine energy within all life, which just essentially like a positive and negative as well. And so they just respect God in nature, and they deal with a lot of spirit beings as far as fairies and angels and things like that. It's more of a nature magic with Wicca, so it's a lot less destructive on the outside. But dealing with that, if you don't know what you're doing, I mean, even some of the stuff that comes off appealing as nice and friendly, I mean, there's deceptive spirits out there too. So they may come off as presenting themselves to be these type of angelic or friendly entities, but really, they want to possess you. They need a body. They need a host, and they'll tell you whatever you want to hear, just so that you'll give them attention and give them time. And I think that they want to live in your mind. I think they want to live in your brain, and then kind of influence you so that they have a body here on the earth, because they're influencing people and essentially driving them mad.
Yeah, another thing, I mentioned voodoo to you. When I was really young, I think I was probably like 13 or 14 or so, I was watching a movie, on TV, on voodoo and all that stuff, So I decided to get a doll and put, pins in it and cast a spell on somebody I didn't like. And the next week they had appendicitis, and it really scared me,
Yeah, when you're dealing, when you do that stuff, I mean, there's people who are, very trained in the occult and, very well researched in this stuff, and they'll tell you with stuff like, Ouija boards and stuff like that, just to stay away from it, because you want to make contact with something, but you kind of have to do the spiritual work to do that. You can't just approach it and say, okay, whatever's out there, we want to know who's in this house. If you really want that, because when we're talking about these different ranges of vibrations in the spirit realm. There's all types of entities out there. I believe that there's, entities that are not good or bad. They're just neutral. They're just there, and I think they have a job. I think they're over the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom and things like that, and these different elemental spirits. And you can wake them up. You can deal with them, but they're not always just good or bad. And so that's where the lines get a little bit black and white if we're just approaching it from a religious standpoint. We just want to think, we hope that it's easy. We hope that it's just all good or bad and there's nothing in between, and we have to kind of figure it out. But from my experiences, there's so many different ranges of if we want to call them aliens and angels and demons and unclean spirits, and all of these things are out there. And I think that they all do exist and they all serve a purpose. And a lot of them want, like I said, if they're a disembodied spirit, you would think that they would naturally want a body or want a host and different ways that they can influence people to do their bidding.
Yeah.
They get like this gratification over getting you to do the things that they used to do, and they kind of, are essentially leaving a mark here because they have someone doing the same things that they used to.
Uh-huh. Well, you mentioned Ouija board there a minute ago. I used to know somebody was into it, and it seems like they opened up a door that after they did it, their life, just everything, just totally went bad for them. Just constantly, and I don't know. They end up. I don't know what the story was on about it. I think they ended up going to the point where they burned it. But they had, it was strange. They just had the worst luck in the world. And it was just right after they opened the Ouija board. And they were talking to a spirit, but the spirit started out friendly. And then I guess from what they were telling me, after a couple, nights of doing it, all of a sudden it was like, trying to get them to do bad things, like go and, they told me it was like, they were told to go rob a store, and they actually were thinking about getting a gun and going and robbing a store. And they said that's, they got so involved in it. And then they got scared at one point, and they said they burned it. So, it's just so many things out there. It's scary. The spirits, I don't know if there's good spirits or bad spirits but I don't know if they want to control, you. I guess some of the stuff, if you open it up deep enough, it could get really scary. Yeah,
if we're talking about spirits, when we look at the scriptures and we look at some of the ancient texts, we understand that people die, spirits don't die. Spirits are eternal; they live forever, and so it's the people that die. So. Jesus even talks about like dealing with the same spirits that Moses dealt with, and Aaron and Elijah and these guys dealt with the same spirits they fought against that was ruling and reigning, and the spirits of authority and things like that. Jesus said that his fathers dealt with that, and we're dealing with the same spirits. And so, if we're dealing with those realms, these spirits are a lot older than we are, and so they're a lot more smarter and manipulative than we are, and so. The weird thing is like I want to encourage exploration. I don't want to, kind of discourage anybody to want to study this, but you have to use caution, and you would be amiss not to beckon people to use caution. But if you feel called to those things, some people are called to that stuff for a reason, and it takes a very special person to do this spiritual work and not get possessed, not get oppressed, not get beat up. They talk about a lot of the priests in the Catholic Church who actually get into exorcisms and casting out demons. They say they have I think it's like a 6-year spree, and after that they're done. It just takes a toll on their body. Their lives become targeted and stuff by these different entities and sects of demons and things like that. It gets into a lot of stuff, and if you're gonna deal with those realms, it's not to be played with at all. And so. I definitely, even though I put it in my music and I make it sound appealing, which it is to me, I make it sound appealing, but I also tell people that none of it's to be played with Christianity is not to be played with. This,
No.
we're talking about dealing with Jesus and God and angels and all of the good stuff. That's not to be played with either. There's consequences of getting into that and turning away from it. There's consequences for casting demons out of a person. And if they don't mean it, that person may be better off dealing with those spirits that they have. In the scriptures, it talks about if you cast demons out of someone, that demon goes and gets 7 other demons stronger than itself, and it comes back to the person to see if they can, kind of take over. Like you kicked me out, but let me see you kick me and my friends out, and they go get 7 stronger demons, and it says that they come back to take residence in that person again. But if they come back and the home or the body is swept clean and it's a new person and everything's changed and the old sins are gone and the addictions and all that stuff's gone, then they go to dry places and then they go on to try to find another host. But if they come back and they find that house the same way they left it with 7 other demons, it says that the state of that person is worse off than before. So even if we think we're doing good as far as ridding people of their demons, that has consequences as well. And these are some of the things that aren't talked about in the church. They don't, there's evangelists who come and set up tent revivals and cast demons out of people for fun, and it's good. And there's an emotional roller coaster and there's a freedom that happens there. But if there's no discipleship and there's no training and equipping and telling that person what's going on, then when they leave and pack up and leave town, turn their backs on the person, that person's in for a rude awakening. And we got to talk about this stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Boy, if a person gets possessed, I mean, how can you tell if a person's actually possessed? I mean, if you met somebody or knew them, if they were possessed, I mean, is it just their personality changes or what?
Yeah, definitely. They talk about the difference between, possession and being oppressed. And you don't want to be either or. I think there's a lot of people who are oppressed by spirits and things like that, and the struggle of life and worries and, burdens and things like that. When it comes to dealing with these things, it talks about that these spirits are strongholds in your mind and their thought patterns, their vibrations, and they change the way that you think. You look at a drug addict. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. They're always looking to get their next fix, and to do that, they will do anything. They're under the possession of that drug for that time period. I have family members who are in it, and I come from that, and so I understand how that operates. And the way spirits work is very much the same. They want to leave you in a place of madness where they're thinking for you, they're tormenting you. They get a kick out of this, and so we look at. There's so many traces of it, just even in our culture. We can look at people cutting themselves. This is something new that's come here. A lot of teenagers who are depressed, they go to cutting. They cut themselves because they want to feel. If we look over in the Eastern cultures, they cut themselves to make pacts with entities and scratch themselves and things like that. And look in the Bible, and the people who were demon possessed, there was something that linked blood and wanting to scratch themselves and cut themselves, and they had superhuman strength and things like that. So I think that we're seeing a lot of this stuff, even when it comes to oppression. But as far as somebody being possessed by a demon, you get to a point where it's something speaking to you. It's not just influencing you. I think through oppression, we could be influenced by these spirits and by these powers. But possession, you're definitely under total control of the entity, and it leads to maybe killing sprees, murders, rapings, and things like that are under control of these spirits by giving themselves over to it. By many different reasons, that we can kind of come into agreement with these spirits and almost give them legal right to be here. And, you give them they say, if you give the devil an inch 12 times, it becomes a ruler. Uh-huh. It's just always something little and little and little. Well, I'm just going to get into this witchcraft, or I'm just going to do this, or I'm just going to try this drug one time, and now you're doing it. You can't stop. It's just fixed. I mean, where do these things start? They always start with something small and something innocent. I mean, if we look at drug addicts, like these people didn't, it wasn't their goal. It wasn't their childhood dream to be doing this the way they are. It started with, going to a party and someone, hey, you want to try this? Sure. That person could do it one time and be okay, but now you're addicted. Now you can't wait for the next time to do it again. And it gets into a lot of things, and you're willing to manipulate and kind of bend the rules to get what you want. And these spirits do the same thing.
Yeah, I know up in my area, probably about 100 miles, or about 130 miles from where I live, back in the 70s, it was really bad where there was a place where actually witchcraft was practiced. And actually, there was a lot of little people, it disappeared. They actually, at one point, I guess they were kidnapping, young kids and sacrificing them before they finally got caught. And I don't know. From what I read about witchcraft too, and a lot of the stuff that the demons will offer you things too at one point to make you be enticed into it. They make promises to you, and maybe they do keep their promises for a while, but it's only to get you hooked into it. After they get you hooked into it, it's like they pull the tablecloth out from underneath you.
That's exactly what they do, and it kind of works the other way around too, as far as you getting knowledge from them. Like you approach this demon or this jinn or this genie, and in some of the Western, the Eastern cultures, as far as and I know that comes from Islam and things like that, dealing with the genies, and these are the jinn mentioned of in Islam that are in ancient relics. They were in magical lamps and things like that, and that's when it kind of gets into the whole thing: is can items be possessed, or can spirits be linked within, and some type of furniture that a loved one had who died in it, or that was their favorite thing. That gets into a lot of stuff. Some people believe that items can't be possessed, but dealing with some of the ancient scripts, that's where we get the concept of the genies from and the jinn. But they grant you wishes. But I mean, we've seen in many movies and just like a lot of lore over the years that that after that third wish, something happens, or they have the different imps or the genies or whatever who give you the wish, but the wish turns bad. You wish for $1,000 or to win the lottery, you get it, but now you have all these people who are wanting to kill you because you have all the money. You want this, but you get it, and that. So that's always been a notion there that these type of entities want something as well. So you would approach a demon or some type of angelic figure to get the information, and you don't know it a lot of times that they want something back.
Oh, yeah.
You may just want to know that they exist. You just may want to just make contact, but once you make contact, they want something. And I found something as simple as wanting to live in your mind, wanting you to create an altar or a shrine in your home, just so that you acknowledge them. This type of things. It can be as practical as that, of just them living in your mind, that you acknowledge them daily. You wear a necklace that reminds you of that entity, and they will, but then I think it gets to a place where they want to live in your mind and eventually drive you mad, especially some of the poltergeists or deceptive demons as well. Just kind of like what happened to me.
Oh, yeah, and they get people, to do, wicked things, an easy way to put it. I mean, look how many murders through all the years it's been done. Yeah. Some of the famous murderers has actually said that they had spirits in their head telling them to do it.
The devil made me do it, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you research the person, the murderer, it had it, you go back to their childhood. Somewhere during their childhood, they were talking about, encounters or anything like what you're talking about has happened to them. So, I mean, they probably get into your brain and make you do things that, that you rationalize have no control over.
I mean, I had some of the encounters with the cutting, years ago when I was a teenager. I felt this really strong urge to cut myself, and I needed to see my blood, and there was a release when it happened, and it was like this spirit of this thing around me was appeased when I did what it wanted me to do. I felt that sensation. I know what it feels like. And I know what it feels like on the other end. I know what it feels like to do good and feel like God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit is watching over you, beckoning you to do good deeds. And you feel like you appeased the Holy Spirit by doing a good deed or helping, someone out who was in need and things like that, or praying for someone or casting demons out of someone, and you feel this euphoria that comes with it. It goes both ways. I think for one aspect to be true, I think the polar opposite has to be true as well. If you're doing this for demons and they're doing this, then I think that if we are to go on the opposite, I think it's the same for the angels and for God and the Holy Spirit. And I've experienced the heights and depths of both sides, so I can kind of approach it from that one who has been on both sides and kind of live to talk about it, openly and not even biased, just kind of present the information.
Oh yeah. Have you known anybody that's been really possessed that it was to the point that it even scared you?
Man, when people, a lot of it has to do with drugs, I think one of the easiest ways to kind of open up yourself to it is through drugs. There's people who, you can be around people. You can feel it too. You can feel it in your body. You can feel it in your auric field when someone has ill intentions towards you, and they're like being around people who are waiting for you to turn your back so they can knock you over your head and take what you have.
Oh, wow.
Like that. That's straight up demonic. That's not good at all. And so to be around those people who are on drugs and things like that, and I have been through a lot of deliverance sessions myself, and I've performed many deliverance and exorcisms as well, and to see what a person goes through in the body, dysmorphia, and the body's locking up, and their necks turning backward, and can't move their arms, and just their body's locking up, screaming at the top of their lungs, and things like this. It gets really intense. Like a little sweet old woman talking to you like she's Freddy Krueger or something like that from Nightmare on Elm Street, and hearing voices come out of people that are talking with double voices. There's a lot of weird things that happen when people go through these deliverance sessions, man, and they feel, if it's done successfully, they feel a release. They feel like something left them. Uh-huh. There's people with baggage that they've been having since they were a kid. People have been molested and abused, and they could be up there in age, and they've been carrying this hatred and anger towards their father or their uncle or something like that, and then they release it at a certain point. They feel a heaviness leave them, and so there's just all of these oppressions and things like that, and it works in very practical ways. It's like I said, they work in vibrations and thought patterns, and what the Bible calls strongholds. Uh-huh. And it talks about taking all of your thoughts captive, so that you are very picky about the thoughts that you entertain within the day. Yeah. Because if you start entertaining stuff that's demonic in nature, I mean, I know a lot of these people, like all the serial killers, one thing that they had in common is that they all had this overwhelming addiction to pornography. Uh-huh. And it would just go deeper and deeper with what worked for them, whether it was just regular porn, and then it got into some deeper stuff and hardcore and just all types of crazy stuff, and it would mess with them, and they would feel dirty, they would feel tampered with, they would feel used and things like that, and they all had this kind of stuff. So it's something with the things that you entertain, to be careful. They talk about the eyes and the ears being the windows to the soul, and what you let in and what you entertain. I know King David, he says in the scriptures, he says, I made a covenant with my eyes that I may not behold any evil thing, and not even look upon wickedness or things like that, because it becomes a part of you. The things that we behold, we're not the same. When we see this stuff, there's absolutely a desensitization from a lot of this stuff that we see on television, in our day-to-day, and what's the cultural norm and what's the standard. I mean, the stuff that we see here, and then we look at the extreme people in the East, like they don't even let they put shrouds upon their women, and so for them to, like, that's their norm, and for us to be putting this stuff all over television, Madonna, Katy Perry, all of this stuff that's all over television, but that's our norm. And when this kind of stuff becomes normal to you, it definitely is messing with the degradation of a culture. And so some of these spirits here who were once foreign spirits, now it's okay. It used to be out the blue, out the box for a kid to cut themselves. You say, hold on, this kid needs help. All the teenagers do. It's normal. They talk about it openly. You wouldn't want to talk to somebody about that, but they have conversations. They do it together. And these kids are getting up with each other, cutting themselves and stuff. It's something that seems so foreign, but I think a lot of these spirits even are here within the culture, and I think they found a home here in America. They've left, some of the other nations, and those seven spirits stronger, have found a home, in whether it's modern pop culture, and we see what's going on with like entertainment and stuff, and there's just so many layers to it. And I think that everything is spiritual. I think that there's spirituality behind it all, and it can be used for good or bad.
Well, you mentioned like Madonna and Katy Perry and stuff like that. Look at Madonna. I mean, for every good thing that ever happened in her life, she probably had 3 or 4 bad things happen.
Yeah.
And I think, I think so. Yeah, if you want to maybe give up your soul to be rich and famous, you're going to pay the price one way or another. I mean, you're going to, I hate to say it, I mean, for what little happiness that you'll get out of it, you're going to have more hell in your life than you are, heaven.
Well, it's kind of like making the pact with the devils, like we're talking about, and these people who don't know that when they get into it, these demons are gonna come looking for their pay. They give you this limelight, they give you all this stuff. I mean, we're just looking at it now, like all of the stuff that's going on with like the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, and these women who were in Hollywood, and I thought it was normal. Like I remember watching so many, television shows and movies when I was a kid, and all the plots of the movies were about the model who had to get with the executive, and if she did, she got the role. They come walking out of the room, she has the role, and now we're acting all surprised and stuff that everybody's coming out and saying that all of these producers and actors and all of this stuff have been doing these things. It was part of it. Like they have to do certain things to get those roles. It's not free.
I know. You're going to have to.
It comes with a price.
Yeah, you're going to pay for it.
Time to pay the pipe type deal, definitely.
Yeah, there was a famous actor in the 1920s. I can't even think of his name, but he was into, porn really heavy. He would have orgies at his, mansion. And then they would have like sacrifices with goats and all this stuff. He was really into the occult. And then one day, I guess one of the actors wannabes, end up dying from one of his little things he was doing with a group of people, and it all came out. And I mean, here was a guy who was at that time very, very famous. Had all you could ever want in wealth. He had fame naturally because he was a famous movie star, and it all came tumbling down. And I think it was probably the time that the devil said, hey, you got to pay for what you've gotten. So I'm going to take your soul, and you don't have a soul anymore. It's mine. Uh-huh. And the guy was destroyed. Totally went to prison, and I think he even died in prison. And he was so disgraced. I mean, and he was really into the witchcraft practicing.
Yep. They come to collect eventually. Like you can't run from it. You can't prolong it. And it's sad to see like some of the celebrities who, they can't age gracefully either. That's a big thing where they all, were at a certain level of fame, and then they don't want to lose that. They'll do whatever they can to stay at that level. And even when they start to age, they start shooting plastic and chemicals, all in their face, and their faces begin to change, and you can tell and stuff, and they're just holding on to what little bit of fame that they have, what makes them feel alive. And if they feel like they're out of that limelight, then nobody cares, or that's what, gives them their worth or something like that. And so that's the big thing is like people, finding their worth in that and letting that stuff, define them, and it's scary, man. We look at, I mean, we can, even in the Christian realm, with the same thing. You look at, Tammy Faye Baker. We look at what was her name, Jan Crouch, and these women who had all in there. Even the preachers, like the different women who are on television, they're all getting their faces shot up too, and they want to look right, and they can't age gracefully. They all want to, like, they're trying to hold on to this youth or whatever, and it's sad to see, but like, it's the fame, it's the limelight that they're just addicted to.
Oh yeah, and you talk about like the one. I mean, look what happened to her husband. I mean, going to prison and everything like that. I mean, but I used to
Jimmy Swaggart,
and the Baker.
Tammy Faye and Jim Baker.
Yeah, I remember watching faithfully. Their shows. Of God, and then all of a sudden it came out he wasn't the person he was, and when during his trial he said he was possessed. Yeah.
Well, when I was telling you my story about the whole being possessed by these demons and things, and I called all these churches wanting somebody to come and pray with me. And I had one church that called me back, and that pastor came out. Well, that pastor started bringing us to church, and he'd come pick us up, and me and my girlfriend bring us to church, bring us to Bible study and things. My car was messed up at the time. And so I ended up moving away. I was living in Louisiana at that time, and so we moved back to Alabama just after we became Christians, just a couple weeks after. So we was only going there a couple weeks. And so I would go visit family in Louisiana. So we'd go back every couple months, maybe 6 months, 3 months, or whatever. I'd go visit my mom, my sister, grandmother. And then that Sunday, we'd want to go to church. So we'd want to go visit the church we used to go to. So we'd go back there, and the pastor would have me stand up and acknowledge me. And, yeah, Derek's in town. He's come to visit. Hey, everybody give him a round of applause, and, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So we'd go back home, and then 6 months later, we'd come back, and same thing. And it was a charismatic church. It was kind of weird, but it wasn't nothing too crazy. I've seen all that stuff before, people dancing and tambourines and stuff, And then a couple more months had passed by, maybe another 6 months. We go back to Louisiana to go visit my family, and I go by the church to see what time service was, because I wanted to go visit and go to church there. And all of the times are scratched off of the door. If they had it on there, they scratched it off with a razor blade.
Uh-huh.
And they had a sign up that said service by invite only. And there was cardboard on the windows, like cardboard and aluminum foil blacking out all the windows. This is strange. So
yeah, that's real strange.
I go to my grandmother's house, and I get in the phone book. I try to call the church, no answer. I wanted to go so bad, I started calling all the pastors, or calling people who had the same last name as the pastor.
Uh-huh.
It was a small town. I figured family members went there. I was like, hey, did you guys know what time service starts? And they said, lose my number, don't ever call me again. Well, we didn't go to church. We went and visited another church that Sunday. About a year and a half, 2 years later, my mom comes in town to visit us in Alabama. And she said, did you guys hear about that church I used to go to? I said, no, what happened? She said, well, the pastor, they got caught performing satanic sacrifices and molesting children. I said, what? She said, yeah, they were molesting children. They were doing animal sacrifices and worshiping Satan in the church.
Oh, wow. Now, Now, I'm just wondering if while he was doing his normal, preaching to God, if he was actually picking out people that he could, kind of bring into Satanism. And
that's what came out. That's what came out. They said that he would find people who were unstable, who were maybe addicted to drugs, and he said they would pick them up and bring them to church.
Uh-huh.
And I look at my story, like I'm in that story. Like he would come and pick me and my girlfriend and bring us to church, bring us to Bible study, make you feel welcome. I never experienced nothing like that. Well, I was only going there for a couple of weeks. What we've seen was just a regular charismatic Christian church.
Wow.
My mind I don't know how do you transition from that. I don't know how you transition from we're doing regular church service to, okay, they got into, and this was people who were, high up in the, like there was people who were police officers and sheriffs who were in teachers. Like they would all trade their kids out, and they were molesting each other's kids and doing animal sacrifices and drinking blood and crazy stuff. Like, how do you go from having a Sunday church service to this is what we're doing, and all of these people being on board with it? That's the weird thing. And actually, the church, if anybody wants to look it up, is Hosanna Assembly in Hammond, Louisiana. And they ended up making a television show based off of this. It was the show with Woody Harrelson and the other guy. It's called True Detective.
Uh-huh.
And they based it off of the Hosanna Assembly trial. Woody Harrelson and I can't think of the other actor's name. He's a big actor. They played two detectives, and they go through the case or whatever. So it was on CNN. It was on national news and things like that. I didn't experience anything like that, but it was very strange.
Maybe if you would have been going there longer, you would have. To me, from what you're describing, what he would do is go find people that had problems, emotional problems or insecurity problems, or a place maybe not to live, and he would bring them into the church, show them kindness, and then slowly, bring them into the occult.
Yeah, that's what you do. Like a lot of people, there's a lot of cults who do that. We look at Jim Jones, we look at all of these people who are into cults. They just start telling these people who have had bad lives and they've been told that they're worthless and they'll never amount to nothing their whole life. And here's this authority figure saying, hey, I see potential in you. You have a home here. You're going to be somebody. God has a plan for you. And you start telling people that who have just been degraded their whole life, they'll do whatever you tell them to do.
Yeah.
I've seen it I've seen it in big, even church circles and small church circles where I've had it happen to me. I've, gone to different places. It's not cults or anything bad, but it's that you feel connected with that person. There's a trust there that ends up coming, and obviously if that's his plan, and then somebody calls his answering machine and leaves a message and says, "Hey, I feel like I have a demon. I need you to pray with me." He jumped on the opportunity. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's really scary because what you just touched base on, it's happening, and it wasn't this happening in Alabama or wherever you said it. It's happening everywhere, and and it comes out. But the bad part is, look what happened to the Jones family. They all up for Satanism in the church. They all committed suicide. Yeah. And where did their souls go? Are they still walking the streets, walking around in the jungles? I don't know.
It's probably haunted. If it's probably haunted, most likely.
Now that's what really scares me. So, the things out there, and black-eyed children, I'm still trying to tie in where they come from and where the whole story of that has appeared. It seems, again, they're kind of, on that, is kind of tied into being demons or something, because, from the different stories I've read about it and heard about, it seems to be the same thing. They just want to, it's so many scary things out there.
Yeah, we look at the other cult. What was that? The UFO cult.
Oh yeah. Back about 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit longer than that. Where they all wore Nike cross trainers, and they all had black jumpsuits, and they all did the Kool-Aid as well. The Heaven's Gate cult.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, they thought they were going to be being picked up, and they had to shed their humanly body.
Yep.
Yeah.
To be picked up with the Hale-Bopp Comet, I think it was.
Yeah, that's scary to do too. I don't know if that is. Maybe whoever is head of the church, they're the ones that are the demons, and they need all those souls, and that's one way to do it. They possess them all, and when they have possessed them all, they don't need them anymore, and now they need their soul.
That and you see, like, you know, when somebody establishes something, you see how they don't want to give up control. Almost like we're talking about how those in Hollywood don't want to give up their youth and don't want to give up their little throne of power that they've built for themselves and say, you know what, I'm aging gracefully. It's time for me to step out. We see some people kind of doing that. You know, like, you don't see like somebody like Mel Gibson, you know, shooting his face with all type of plastic and stuff. He's aging gracefully. He's embraced it. There's a lot of the male actors, I think, are doing that. But then it's, you know, the people who don't want to give up their seat of power, their seat of authority. So when Jim Jones, you know, all of his people were trying to leave, and they were saying that this place was one thing that it wasn't. They wanted to go home. People were going home. He said, well, you can't go home. You know, if you go home, they're going to kill you. They're killing all. And he would tell people that they're actually killing all the blacks in America now. We can't let you go home. They're killing all the blacks and Indians and all the brown skinned people are being murdered. They've declared martial law. He's trying to scare these people not to go home, and they will call their parents and say, you know, nothing like that's going on. So rather let them people go home, and all these people who were wanting to leave, he didn't want to fail. He didn't want to lose his seat of power that he built. That was his little thing. So he said, look, if I'm going down, we're all going down. We're going down together. So he didn't want to lose it, you know, and he took everybody out with him. And you know, the weird thing is I've been a part of different sub-sects of Christianity, of essentially cults that after I left them because they did some culty stuff, like wanting to move everybody into a commune in Egypt, you know, and people sold their properties and had hundreds of people, women leaving their husbands to sell all their possessions to go live with these people in Egypt. I left. I didn't want no part of that, you know, because I was there when that stuff started happening. But then I watched the Jonestown stuff, so, you know, it was probably a year after, and all of the things that Jim Jones was saying, the guy who was leading up this group that I was in, he's saying the same things. Like, he was talking about how America, you know, they're going to kill all the black people. We have to leave America because America's going to be destroyed with, you know, nuclear destruction. And it says in the Bible that America will be destroyed. And, you know, they would equate America with Babylon the Great. Babylon will be destroyed. And, you know, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be, and destruction. And he got people to believe this.
Oh, yeah.
So much so that women were leaving their husbands.
Well, they brain
their kids to go live with these people.
Yeah, but they brainwash them over a period of time. These occults, they do. They show you if they knew that you didn't have love at your house. Okay, they would, and you weren't doing good financially. They would show you love. They would show you, you know, everything that you wanted, and then at the end you pay the price. I mean, and that's what's scary.
It is, and you can see how all of it kind of plays out the same when you're dealing with spirits that are influencing people. I mean, obviously these people are under control of some type of controlling spirit or just different spirit of manipulation and witchcraft and things like that, which is just to deceive people and to, you know, just to have these seats of power to get, and they don't want to lose it. They don't want to lose it, and it plays a part spiritually in the spirit realm, and we see the manifestations of it in the physical realm, you know?
Yeah. Hey, now, another thing, too, about aliens and UFOs. Let's touch base on that a little bit here, too, because we're getting down, you know, boy, time is going really fast with you. That's, Derek, that's really cool. UFOs, I mean, what got you interested in UFOs?
All right, so I always say that in studying the Bible, if you're studying angels and demons within the scriptures or even just ancient texts, eventually you're going to be led to aliens and UFOs. If you're studying it in the scriptures, you'll be led to the book of Enoch. And in the Christian perspective, most people study it and they think that UFOs or aliens are fallen angels, demonic entities that patrol the night sky or whatever the case is, or interdimensional beings, whatever they want to call it. But so I started studying angelology, And I've always been, had this fascination, like I said, with the occult, with horror movies and things like that, and aliens being a part of it, but being something scary. So studying it as a Christian, I was led to the work of all the Christian ufologists who, and they all have the same conclusion that any light in the sky, anything out there is demonic. It's a demon, an alien that wants to abduct you and to kidnap you and things like that. So I started studying under that realm of thinking for probably a year or so, and I felt this agenda there that everything was demonic, and they painted everything so black and white. And upon doing that, you're led to ancient aliens, and you may find somebody else who is bringing something else to the table. And some of the secular ufologists, I felt like they were just approaching it and giving you the information for what it is, and they didn't have a biased agenda. Obviously, the Christians have a doctrine and a biased agenda that they have to stick to and things like that. So that's what I felt from the Christian ufologists. So upon doing my study, and I started to kind of branch out to like some people like David Wilcock and James Gilliland, Stephen Greer, some of these guys, and look at their work. And there was another guy who had a website at the time called BibleUFO.com. It was a guy by the name of Patrick Cook. And he actually had one of the biggest databases online for anything occult or paranormal that's mentioned of in the Bible. And this website was amazing. He's since passed, and his wife actually got rid of the site once he passed. But studying all of this stuff, looking at the information for what it is, many of these people talk about going out having contact, going out and seeing UFOs and seeing craft and different techniques to signal them and things like that. So listening to a lot of that stuff, I wanted to know, I wanted to see. And so the realm of studying that I was doing, even in the Bible, was something that showed these angels that were traveling as fire by night and a cloud by day, and they would travel back and forth from heaven to earth, and they would do that. So I would find myself stargazing for hours on end, wanting to see something out there, wanting to know if this was real. And I began to just really seek God in prayer, just in alone time under the stars, and ask him if the seraphim, which is mentioned of in the Bible as the fiery serpents, those who are made out of the fire of heaven, that they travel the heavens as fire, but as they wish, they can become as men on the earth. And I said, okay, if these are out there, if the Elohim, if the cherubim, the seraphim, the Raphaim, if these entities are out there, these angels are out there traveling, I said, God, let me see them if they're of you and of your greater good. And as spending hours out there and have a sincere heart, I started to see UFOs, what we would call UFOs, lights in the sky at night that would fly by and then stop on a dime. They would fly by, then they would turn. They would do, turn directions and do these different 90-degree turns and change colors and tag. I'd see them tag each other, or two flying side by side out of the atmosphere, and then they'd all of a sudden change directions and they would tag other stars, and it was insane, the stuff I was seeing. But mind you, I was spending hours under the stars seeing this stuff. And so I wanted to see it during the day. So I said, okay, anybody can see a satellite or a light at night. It could be anything. Let me see them during the day. And I ended up seeing fleets of UFOs during the day. And I call them UFOs. I think they're angelic beings. And they're mentioned throughout the Bible and throughout all the other holy books. And so that's where it started, of just having this fascination with them and seeing, as far as studying the spirit realm, my past and everything we've already covered, to wanting to move forward. Like, it's not all just demonic. It's not all just angels and demons. Let me know what's going on. There's different ranks of demons. The host of heaven, these warring spirits that are watching over humanity and flying above us, and they've been there the whole time. All we had to do was stop and look up.
Yeah, wow. Encounters with the aliens. Have you had an encounter with an alien?
Not with a physical being, as far as a being is concerned. So we talk about telepathic communication and things like that. And so a lot of times with the sightings and with the connection, people talk about receiving messages and different things like that while they're stargazing or while they're seeing craft. So I have had some type of communication as far as that is concerned. And it's always been like a positive interaction. It's been positive stuff about my life, about humanity and things like that. So it's never been nothing negative. And then some of the interaction goes a little bit deeper as far as while you're in meditation, connecting with these angelic beings as well. So there's that, and then you can sense them around you, different things as far as like telling you to look up. I've been told to look up while I was driving at a certain part of the sky, and I've seen one there during the day. And as soon as it acknowledged that I seen it, it disappears. I've seen insane lights in the sky just come out of nowhere. As soon as they knew that I seen it, they light up and they take off and they fly into a star system. Like stuff that I'm scrambling to try to get a camera to film it, when you see it, but it's just like spur of the moment. So as far as the contact, it's more of like a spiritual inward knowing that, hey, something's watching over me. You start having the synchronicities that people are talking about, different things that you've never noticed in your life happening back to back, or you see an 11:11, 3:33, stuff like that all the time, and to know that something's watching over me. Something's guiding me. And so I think that these angels, these angelic beings, ETs, aliens, I mean, we're opening up a whole can of worms, but I think they're a little bit of all of it. I think what we call aliens, I think that they're angels. And so that's the type of contact that I've had. It's all been beautiful. I've never had like any type of I'd say I didn't have any type of scary experiences, but early on when I would see craft coming in low, I did get scared because of all of the television stuff I've seen in Hollywood, of the abductions and things. I've watched all the movies. So when I would want to see a sighting and I would have a sighting that would come down really low, like above my house, I would panic, because I would think that they were going to abduct me or something, But then I'd have to fight with those emotions. Like, is this really what you want? Are you really trying to make contact, or are you just playing? So there's that whole thing as well. But to more of anything, whether it's just to talk about this or to sound like this is something I'm privileged to do, it all stems from just wanting to know myself. Of just wanting to know what is going on. What is it? What are they? Or is it true? Or is it just something for Hollywood? And I've had enough encounters with different realms of spiritual belief and entities and things like that to know that there's more to it. So I'm still investigating. I'm still investigating. I know my truth, and I know what works, and the things that have benefited me and others. And so that's the type of things that I like to kind of, still look into. I don't think I have it all figured out. I don't think that anybody does. So it really behooves me when people write books on this stuff and they have all the details, because I've had amazing things happen. I've seen stuff that is just mind blowing, and I've put in the supplication, I've put in the spiritual work, and I still don't know what's going on. To say that, these are the beings from the Sirius star system who have come here to teach us how to, live off of air alone or something. There's all kind of crazy stuff you hear. But so to think that I haven't figured out, I don't. I do think that they're angelic and benevolent entities, and the exchange I've had has been amazing. Releases of creativity when you find out that something is like that's going on. There's so much that comes with it on a spiritual revelation. That you're connected, and that God or the angels aren't just this place where you communicate with when you die, that there's something is actually physically out there in the heavens.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but also you were talking about angels and all that stuff as, being aliens and stuff. But then couldn't there be, I guess, aliens too that is the opposite, where they're demons too? I mean, where you have good and you have bad.
Yeah. When it comes to the demons, the research that I've done, as far as because I try to have these practical experiences in firsthand encounters, but then I try to reason them through the Bible and some of the ancient texts. And like I said, some of the ancient texts talk about this stuff. And so when we talk about the heavens, so we look up in the sky and we've seen a disc, or we've seen a cigar-shaped craft or whatever. And the Bible talks about that these demons were kicked out of heaven. The angels who fell, they're called fallen angels because they fell from heaven. They fell from grace. The word heaven in the Bible is the same word for sky. It says, I looked up into the sky. It's the same word for heaven in the Greek and in the actual Hebrew. So they were kicked out of the heavens. So for us to think that these demons are flying around in spacecraft, the demons are down here with us. So I think that the first half of the show, or just, the majority of the show, we've kind of made a decent case for some type of, demonic or unclean spirits who are down here dealing with men. So when we're talking about those who have our greater good in mind, Jesus said to look up. Your salvation draweth nigh. Focus on the things above, and so these type of things help me to. I think the bad guys are down here with us.
Yeah, it must be a lot of them.
Yeah. No, there definitely is, and it goes, it goes on many levels to, the ruling elite. It brings into this whole theory of the reptilians, or these people who are overlords, or who are, they need us or created us to be slaves and things like that. It gets into a lot of different theories, and I'm not one to kind of go into the reptilian theory or nothing like that, like David Icke. But I will say that biblically, it talks about that the seed of the Son of Man, or the seed of the woman, will fight against the seed of the serpent. It talks about this serpent seed. So it talks about these beings that are here, or these people that are of the serpent seed. When we look at all the iconography of the serpent and ancient culture and the dragons and things like that, and the statues and everything that the elite kind of relic, the different things that they have. I think David Icke has done a lot of good research to show that something's going on out there even with our ruling class. So I don't think that they're good people, man. I look at the wars, I look at the rumors of wars, and I've seen footage of space cameras of what looks to be some type of UFO coming close to our atmosphere, and laser beams being shot up there at these ships or these discs or whatever they are, and they turn around and they leave. And so whoever's on the earth is shooting up beams at those ships. I think that the bad people are here. I think that the people, like the whole ruling elite, I don't think that these are good people at all. I don't think that they have our best interest in mind. I think that they have their best interest in mind. And even the people of Hollywood, they look at the regular lay people as almost just a different type of species. As the different poor classes on there. I listen to these people talk. I listen to interviews, and I hear when they talk about the man who works at Jiffy Lube and the man who changes tires, and I hear them laugh and scoff, and it's like, wow. And these are even from celebrities who seem like bros. They seem like they are in touch with the culture and with the people, but there's just this disconnect, and I don't think it's good. I think that these people look down upon us. That's just the regular everyday lay people who are here, that we're just either underclassed or underprivileged or whatever. They look at themselves upon this pedestal, and you can hear it, and it's nasty. It's nasty when you can hear it. Some people. Some of them don't want us around.
They would probably love to see, the majority of me and you and the guy working at Jiffy Lube gone off the face of the earth. They have their own objectives. So like you're mentioning, UFOs and coming near Earth, and maybe a laser beam shot on. It's a lot of things. Probably because they don't want an encounter to be known, number one, because everything that we've been told, I hate to say it, a lot of it has been a lie. We've been fed propaganda.
Yeah, I tend to the writings of the ancients and stuff, and to see how this stuff stands the test of time, and see so much see, and just to see how it stands, and to see that there's some type of war that's always been said, that there's this war that's being fought between good and evil, and there's this, the upper class against the lower class, and the haves and the have-nots, and the battle of Armageddon and things like that to be fought. I think it was who was it? The Christian philosopher, I can't think of his name right off. Edmund Casey said that he believed that the battle of Armageddon would be fought in outer space, in the heavens. And so I think that there's this. I do think that there's a war going on. I think that that they look at us as a different species. I can't go as far as to say that we are. There's people who claim that, as far as the whole reptilian thing, and these people who are all related to one another, the 13 bloodlines, all of that stuff. It gets into some really deep stuff. I have no proof. I haven't experienced that. So the things that I'm bringing to the table with my music and the spirituality and the UFOs and the demons and angels, like, I've experienced that stuff. I feel like I can talk on it with authority. The rest of it's just theory. I really don't know. I can tell you what the text says, and I can tell you what I see, but other than that, as far as to say that this is exactly what's happening, I make sure that I don't do that.
Yeah. Well, we do know something is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So what got you into making music?
I've always been over infatuated with music. I mean, as a young person, it's just been a place of escape, where you can put on music and just kind of escape what was going on, and so that was something big ever since I was a kid and just a teenager and stuff like that. So really infatuated with music, and started playing in bands as a teenager and as a young adult, playing in bands, and started doing hip hop. Had my own recording studio that I created, and just experimenting and getting better and better. I started out doing gospel music as in the churches, doing gospel hip hop, traveling to different churches, telling them my story. I would tell them about the witchcraft and things like that, and they would love to hear me speak. I would go to these churches and speak to the youth and stuff. But some of it was too deep for the churches, and I wouldn't even give them the deep stuff. I would just talk about these demonic realms and things. And so, it was something I did for a really long time. I did that from it was like 2003, 2004 to about 2012 is when I pretty much stopped. I was a Christian evangelist doing the Christian hip hop, just going to hundreds of churches over the years, and I would travel. People would have me out and book me and things like that. So, but when I started talking about politics, I started talking about the Illuminati and some of the deeper things early on. You can talk about that stuff now in the churches, but early on when we were talking about the Illuminati and stuff, they didn't want to, hear nothing about that, anything conspiracy-wise. And then we're talking about aliens and looking into Eastern philosophies and how they mesh with Christian philosophy and things. That's the kind of stuff I talk about in my music, and that kind of was the separation there from me doing gospel or being some type of youth evangelist. So it was about, like I said, 2012 when everything started to kind of shift for me.
Yeah, it looks like it. How did they respond to you when you first started? Did you talk to them about UFOs and stuff like that? Did they kind of shun you and stuff like that back?
Yeah, there's something that they call, and this is a phrase that people have kind of coined, who've had it happen to them, but there's something that they call ghosting. It's like pretty much excommunication without saying it. I did this. I started doing this music and researching and stuff, and to put it out there to kind of have conversation with people, have people who were into this type of stuff as well, to kind of talk about it, just to have dialogue. But I found out that they were having dialogue, but I wasn't a part of it. It was always about me, but never with me. So you find out that people are. I think a lot of people are afraid of conflict, so, which, at the time I talk about it, it was kind of hard going through that. I was shunned essentially, but it was never to my face, it was always like, stay away from that guy. He's off the beaten path. He's into devil worship or whatever they wanted to call it, that type of stuff. So they essentially demonized me or whatever, but never formally. It was all ghosting. Stay away, turn your back to him, don't answer, don't accept his phone calls, don't entertain him, don't go to his house, that kind of stuff. And so eventually they want you to get the picture versus like, hey, let's sit down and have a dialogue about it. Let's talk about this stuff you're teaching people, which when you look back on it, like I can see why they did it, you're trying to run an establishment or a church or whatever, and here you got this guy talking about the Kundalini, you're talking about Eastern mysticism, in your music and things, you're bringing something else to the table. They have no idea. Like all that's demonic to them. It's either God or the devil. It's Jesus or the devil. So there is no in between. If you're not with Jesus, it's demonic. So bringing up, and so the studying I've done has been actually a lot of syncretism, which just shows how a lot of the religions are the same. Like looking at the religions and seeing what we have in common. But when I was a part of Christianity, as far as backing it as a religion, I was taught to find out what makes us different. Why are we right and they are wrong? And so that's what they would teach us to do. So being a lot more compassionate and considerate about others' feelings and about what they believe, and not having to prove them wrong and things like that, is where I started to go a little bit deeper in my awakening as well.
Wow, when did things start changing to the positive for you on this? I mean, when?
Man, it's always been a struggle. It's been an inward struggle to make sure that I wasn't deceived. That there was a time where I thought that those demons from my past, that I was so, long ago rid of, had come back to visit me. 7 stronger, to ruin my ministry and this big platform that I had built within Christianity, and I ruined it all. And so there was that struggle and going back and forth, and maybe I shouldn't research this stuff. Maybe I shouldn't go back to it. And people would say that I went back to witchcraft and I went back to devil worship, and it was insane. So to be adored by a lot of people, pastors, and even just all these different young people who had your music and stuff, to be adored by these people, and then for those same people to say, okay, stay away from him. Now he's a devil worshiper. Like that takes a toll on you. It's hard. So I went back and forth a lot about, okay, I ended up putting up my first album that had this esoteric information in it, and just a straight spiritual album, and I ended up deleting it. I sold a bunch of pre-orders. I think I sold like 50 pre-orders. I refunded everybody their money back.
Uh-huh.
And I said, you know what? I apologize. I said, look, I'm deceiving people. Like I don't want to be, that being shunned by the people you've been with for years in ministry and things. It was so hard. I didn't know what to do. So I would go back and forth. I would get rid of all my books. I would apologize to people. I would stay away from people. I would publicly do it. So this was something that was taking place on social media, my videos, my merch. I would get rid of everything and I would come back. So it was just back and forth to really understanding that I could be comfortable being the person that God created me to be. And I was called to these things for a reason. But then as the church folks would let me come back around, I felt this inward struggle. It's like, man, like you just want to be accepted.
Uh-huh.
You're giving up the person that God created you to be and put those likes and dislikes in you for a reason to be into the realms of the unknown. And you're giving it up because you want these people to applaud you again. You want these people to welcome you. And the road less traveled is the path of the mystic. And so it took a long time for me to fully embrace that, of going back and forth, till I really just began to be comfortable within my own skin and know that God, eventually you start believing what those people say about you, and that's the hard thing. So that's why you have to have a close relationship with God and understanding that your motives are pure and reevaluating that. Because if you're listening to what they tell you, and if you don't know who you are, you allow them to tell you who you are, who you are. And so that's the big thing. There's so many people we talked about tonight just having an identity crisis and stuff. Uh-huh. So we're all looking to belong. Like we all want to belong. We all want to be patted on the shoulder, say, hey, you're doing a great job. We appreciate you. Like we all want that. So when that was stripped and the opposite happened, it was very hard. So, that whole thing started around 2012. So it's been like from then to now. And I'd say, probably a good 3-4 years now that I've been secure in who I am and been on this path. And now that I'm showing up with consistency. I do my podcast and I do my music, and I'm consistent to share my story and not hide anything. Even if I don't know, I'm just open with it. So I've seen within the last 8 months or so, my podcast begin to kind of grow wings and take off, and the numbers begin to increase, and the messages in my inbox and people who are, just resonating with the messages just increase. And so I've just found it just simply being authentic. It's not about being right. It's about being authentic. And if you don't know, it's okay to say that you authentically don't know. But this is my experiences, and this is what I'm sticking to, and this is what I believe. But to say that I'm right and you're wrong, I don't do that. And for some reason, it's been appealing to me and others when I see others doing what they love for a living and just being who they are, and they don't have to wear a mask. And you can be a Christian and talk about the things that you're into, and I do that. I mean, I have a podcast. I'm still a Christian as far as my belief. I still have my faith in Christ. That makes me a Christian. I believe in Christ. I follow Him with my heart. I study the Scriptures. I study other texts too. But we can have an open discussion about psychedelics and about aliens and all of these things. So I'm not the only one who's waking up. It's not just me. So I've just been vocal about it.
It's a lot of people out there. More people than
I
you.
went through that stuff. Yeah. So I know I can speak on it with confidence now.
In the last couple of years, have you noticed, like on TV and movies, a lot more paranormal? If you go onto the internet, a lot more paranormal podcasts, radio shows. And people are being more open to it more than ever. I mean, if you take 10 people and put them in a room, probably out of the 10 people, 4 people will they'll believe in the paranormal. But if you went back 10 years ago and took 10 people in that room, you might have one person, if you're lucky, say, hey, I believe in the paranormal. People are opening up to, there is things out there that nobody can explain about. Yeah. There is demons. It has to be. If you believe in the Bible, there is demons. And, they can, like you mentioned, they can come into your life and make your life, what the old expression, totally hell. So, I mean, and now, jumping the last couple of minutes we have about the video you made, you want to talk a little bit about that and where the people can see it and all that information?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube and type in TruthSeekah, Truth, SEEKAH, you're able to access all my videos that way. I do a podcast as well. So if you just type that in, all of my stuff will come up in Google, or simply go to TruthSeekah.com. We have a bunch of stuff that we're bringing to the table, whether it's music, podcasts, videos. We have an online School of the Mystics that we do every Thursday night, which is like a roundtable discussion where people can just kind of open up in a safe community of people who kind of have had similar experiences. And so all of my stuff's there. I do videos that kind of give the visual end to my music. So if we're talking about alien contact, if we're talking about UFOs and there's footage and all this stuff, whether it's in movies like we're talking about, it's in entertainment, there's a lot of stuff. And I'll take that to kind of create something visually out of it. If it's a scene in a movie that's talking about what I'm mentioning in the song, I'll throw that in there. So it'll be, a lot of my videos are big collages of a bunch of movies that are talking about the paranormal and contacting and things like that. So it could, like, to listen to the music, it's one thing to have a spiritual experience from it and this creative work of art. But it's something else as well. It takes it to a next level when you're able to see, the visual aspect of it as well. It kind of makes some things click and kind of make things make more sense and things. So it's really, really cool. I really appreciate the level of creativity now that I'm doing this type of music. It opens it up to so many levels. So, I can talk about, if I want to communicate the message of we are not alone. Like, there's so many different words I can use. We can talk about the Anunnaki. We can talk about Enlil and Inky and the different entities and angels and aliens. Okay, we're talking about angels. How many words are there for angels? Or we can break down the Hebrew and the Greek words. That's one thing. We can talk about the Raphaim, the Malachim. We can talk about the Watchers. We can talk about the Angel of the Lord. We can talk about. There's just so much as far as the realm of creativity. And when I use these words, I'm essentially just talking about angels.
Yes.
Now when it gets into the vocabulary of what type, now that's we can get very deep into that. So, and the same thing with aliens. I believe that angels are aliens, like I stated. So we're talking about them just for creative aspects and leading people to do their own research. We can label all the star systems. We can talk about the Palladians. We can talk about the Arcturians. We can talk about the Galactic Federation of Light, and not to really just do it to open up doors of creativity and for people to study and to hear the song and be like, what in the world is he talking about? To be something totally unique, but then it still embody a piece of my spirituality and my spiritual encounters as well. To kind of take that and essentially take really deep concepts in the Bible or spiritual concepts of communicating with ETs or whatever, and I break them down and make them sound very simple, nonchalant. Anybody can do it. Yeah. And then I take very simple terms like prayer, talking to God, and I make that sound so intricate and beautiful. So I take the deep concepts, make them sound simple, take the simple concepts and try to complicate them and make them sound beautiful and as intricate as they really are.
Now, since all this change has come about with you, from when you were practicing witchcraft and everything else, I mean, have you had any encounters in the last few years since everything is going positive for you? Something it wanted to pull you back? Have you had that happen to you where you get the urge or something is calling you back into witchcraft or Satanism or, all that type of stuff?
Yeah, nothing. Just because my relationship, I believe, with God and my foundation with Christ, like I was at my lowest point, and that's like the revelation of God was through Jesus. That's my foundation. So everything is built on top of that. If I can do it with boldness and confidence. I can explore these things. So I don't have I've never had a desire to leave that foundation. Now, many people will tell you that I have left the foundation because I'm going into these other things and studying them or talking about them on my music or interviewing people who are into this kind of stuff. So as far as the person watching who has come from a religious background, to them, I've definitely gone. I've heard it said that like I said, people say that I'm in witchcraft, and people say that I am a devil worshiper. I don't do anything like that. My foundation to this day is still Christ. It's Christ crucified. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I share that love with people. So I go on New Age shows, and I go on shows where we're talking about aliens, and then I'll try to find a way to start talking about how I have authority over demons, how I have authority to speak, and they obey my voice is because of my authority in Christ and in Jesus. And I'm able to go on shows like that and tell my story like I did tonight about being at my lowest. And when I was at my lowest, I called out to Christ, and he was there. Nobody, Buddha didn't show up. Krishna didn't show up. When I was at my lowest, it was Jesus, man. So that's my foundation. Everything's built on top of that. And that's not to belittle and say whoever is into that other stuff that's not real or that's not my goal anymore. My goal is to tell my story because it's mine, and I'm okay with that. I don't have to be right. I don't have to be, I don't have to have your approval. It's my story. And I'm empowering people with that and to see what the podcast is doing, and we're connecting people. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, I think that's what the Lord wanted you to do is, do your music, do your podcast and your video and stuff like that. I think that's probably what your calling has been the whole time. And you had to experience the other to get where you're at now.
Yep, exactly.
Wow, it's been a really heavy, almost 2 hours. You know that, Derek. You've been a great guest. I mean, and I didn't interrupt you very much because I didn't want to, because I think you had a lot to say.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you for having me, and I enjoy talking about this stuff and hearing other people's takes on it too. I have my own show. I have guests come on, and I like to hear their stories and their opinion, and I try to rationalize it back with the Bible. It's very interesting, man. You can learn a lot by just listening to other people. That's what I bring to the table. And like I said, I think that's why it's flourishing. I do approach it from a biblical perspective, but I don't demonize everything, right? So, like if in the church realm, if we're talking about angels, if we're talking about demons, if we're talking about aliens or ayahuasca or psychedelics or something or ghosts, they want to demonize it and say, well, there's no such thing as ghosts.
Yeah.
Ghosts are demons. Like there's a Christian perspective that believes that all ghosts are demons who are tricking people, but I think there's more to the conversation, and I've just made myself open and available to kind of explore those realms without judgment.
Yeah. Again, I want to, before I let you go here, I want you to give everybody, information how they can contact you on YouTube, listen to your podcast. Please, say it again.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, you can go to TruthSeekah.com, Truth, SEEKAH, TruthSeekah.com. All of my stuff's there. I'm on iTunes, my music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere where you get podcasts or media. You can just type in my name, and so my music and the podcast is there as well. So you guys definitely check me out. I'm on social media too. I answer questions, and I'm always available to connect. So you guys check me out.
Hey, well, I'm very glad to have you on the show tonight. I wish everything, positive to you. And I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Let's do it again soon.
Okay, Derek, you have a great week.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that was our show here tonight with Derek. I found it very informative. A lot more guests coming up this week. That it just is going to be so awesome. It's going to be, well, I can say more about UFOs, you name it. We're going to be talking about it. What can I say? Satanism, devil worshiping, witchcraft. It's out there. And I do think it's out there more than people want to admit. Also, I want to thank all of you guys out there who's been making our show so great. I mean, I've been getting so much messages. It's been actually even hard to respond. I mean, let alone Sunday. I think I had well over 100 people message me about the show, and I want to thank all of you that's been listening. And, what can I say other than I want you to tune in tomorrow from 7 to 9 Pacific West Coast time and, listen in to the show. Everybody have a great night.